Now, Formula One teams are continuing testing in Barcelona today. Well, we can cross live now to Craig Slater, who's at the Circuit de Catalunya for us. Morning to you, Craig.
A very good morning to you. It's gone very quickly, hasn't it? This is the last day of pre-season testing, a pretty busy pit lane. Ted Kravitz here as well alongside me. The team's testing out bits and pieces that they'll hope to have on their cars, but it's a device which they will not be able to run until 2017 at the earliest probably, which is causing most of the furore amongst the drivers. This halo protection device attached to the car. Some drivers are in favour, some like Lewis Hamilton are definitely not in favour of it. Are you surprised there's been such a divided opinion on this?
Well, I am, because this is a head protection system that has been devised by the sports governing body, the FIA, and they've had a safety team who've been looking into how best protect the driver's head and avoid some of the fatal and non-fatal head injuries that we've had in motorsport over the last 6 or 7 years. And after their research, they've come up with this what they're calling the Halo head protection system. It's like a big kind of arch that goes over the driver's head, and then it sits in a mounting point in front of the cockpit. Given that it might save these drivers' lives, I have been a little surprised at how vociferously some have come out against it.
This is Lewis Hamilton's Instagram message yesterday. Please know this is the worst looking mod in Formula One history. I appreciate the quest for safety, but this is Formula One, and the way it is now is perfectly fine. I just wondered, Ted, I want to put this to you. Is the genie out the bottle on this now? Now that the FIA have a plausible device that could protect a driver in the event of an accident, if they were not to introduce it, would they be hammered if something did happen and it wasn't there?
It's such a difficult one. There are arguments on both sides. You know, the families of Justin Wilson, Jules Bianchi, Maria De Villota might say that the way it is at the moment is not perfectly fine because they've lost loved ones. But fans and other drivers agree with Hamilton. The drivers do what they do on their own risk, at their own risk and at their own peril. And that's the way they want to go about it. But you're absolutely right. The genie is out of the bottle. If the FIA have come up with something that they have shown would save or avoid the majority or a large majority of the fatal and non-fatal head injuries that we've had in motorsport over the last few years, and then we don't use it, then that opens up a whole different can of worms, doesn't it? And when we could have had a system that would save a life, and then if someone in the future does lose their lives due to a head injury that could have been avoided, then there's some very difficult questions to be answered.
It's a serious issue. Just finally, as the Force India comes out, I want to get an idea from you where you think Lewis Hamilton is in his pre-season preparations. He's looked a little bit downbeat, as I've observed him here this week. Is Nico Rosberg more comfortable in the car? Has Lewis Hamilton still got to show he's adapted to this modified Mercedes? And who is your favourite as we stand at the moment for the Melbourne Grand Prix, the first race of the season?
Well, in a way, Melbourne is actually Ferrari's best opportunity out of the first 3 races to win a Grand Prix, because the Melbourne circuit suits their car better than it does the Chinese Grand Prix and the Bahrain Grand Prix, which are the two circuits tracks after Melbourne, which should favour Mercedes much more than Ferrari. So actually, funnily enough, Vettel is my favourite for the Australian Grand Prix. But what you say is very interesting about Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. At no point has Lewis Hamilton been demonstrably clearly quicker than Rosberg here in winter testing. I wonder if that's just winter testing in Lewis Hamilton's mind. Maybe he's reserving all his energy for when it really matters, as we saw last year, which is during the Grand Prix. And Nico Rosberg's just been expending all his energy in testing just because he can. But let's not ignore the other fact, is that this season with this car, it might just be that Rosberg is plain quicker than Hamilton, something we haven't seen over the last 2 years with their matchups together.
It's fascinating stuff. On the medium tires, there's 3 teams looking pretty close, Williams included. But yeah, these first 4 races, key in the championship. In terms of head-to-head between Hamilton and Rosberg, it's been 4-1 to Lewis. He's finished ahead of Rosberg 4 times to Rosberg's 1 over the first 5 races of the last 2 championship seasons. Interesting stat, that.
Really is. Many thanks, gents.
And Hamilton has put down a marker this morning on the final day of pre-season testing. He set the fastest time on the medium tyres this winter, beating his Mercedes teammate Nico Rosberg's previous best.
Right, let's get more on the breaking news coming from the final day of pre-season testing in Barcelona. Let's cross live to Craig Slater, who's at the Circuit de Catalunya. Craig.
Thank you very much. Yes, the news actually emerging from Geneva, where the World Motorsport Council have been meeting. As I understand it, they have approved the remodelling of qualifying according to the original plans, which was to have a knockout element in Q1, Q2 and in Q3. There had been dubiety whether the software could be ready in time to arrange the timing of the cars, but I understand FOM have given assurances that can be done. But it's the change to Q3 as well, which I think has come as a great surprise to a lot of people in this paddock. We won't get official confirmation of this perhaps until 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. So some, including Ted Kravitz, are perhaps still treating this news with some caution. But how do you think the drivers will react to this? Because pretty much unanimously, they told us, exiting that meeting a couple of nights ago, that they did not want qualifying changed.
Well, the drivers said they didn't want qualifying changed because they said the fans are telling them that it wasn't broke, so they didn't need to fix it. And it's only going to result in more confusion for those watching Formula One. And it seems that now the FIA have just steamrolled over the views of the drivers, and the drivers will be frustrated. Some of them will be angry. Many of them hopefully will talk to us later in the day about their feelings about it. But what are they going to do? There's nothing they can do. They're not the guys who have the power. They don't make the decisions, so they'll just have to get on with it. It's actually probably going to change their qualifying in a very small way, because actually you're still going to get the slowest people dropping out the way you do at the moment. It's just that with these new rules, these new proposals, it will be in a live situation. They'll all be going around or trying to go around, and the slowest will drop out. So it's probably not going to change everything too much. So maybe the powers that be are thinking that drivers are overthinking it a bit, but they will be annoyed.
Do you think the way this has all been handled has been a PR own goal for Formula One?
Well, it's just been very confusing for absolutely everybody. Do we have this new system? Has it been put into the rules? It hadn't. It's a decision from the Motorsport Council now. Doesn't mean it's a rule. Still got to get put into the rules. So let's not be too hasty on that it's definitely going to be a rule, because we won't know that for quite a while until they actually put it in the rules. Can it happen in terms of a TV spectacle? Can the people who do the graphics reprogram everything so that we know who's going to drop out, so that the engineers can tell the driver who's slowest to come in, your number is up? There's still, and that was the stumbling block as to why they thought they couldn't introduce it for the Australian Grand Prix in a week and a half's time. And that's the issue here. The freight goes to Melbourne this time next week. In fact, it would have already gone. Engineers and people and drivers start flying to Melbourne this time next week. It's too late. It's too late in the day to be changing all of this.
Ted Kravitz, thank you very much for the moment. Doubtless we will hear a lot more about this throughout the day. A lot for the drivers to get their heads around.
OK, to Formula One now. For the first time during pre-season testing, Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes has broken down. It happened just before the end of the morning session, was caused by a transmission problem. Hamilton did, however, complete more laps than anyone else this morning, and also managed the fastest time this winter on medium tyres. Well, Hamilton has criticised the halo protection device that Ferrari are trialling in Barcelona. The FIA want to introduce the device next season to improve safety. Now, this is what Hamilton has had to say on Instagram. Please no. This is the worst looking mod in F1 history. I appreciate the quest for safety, but this is Formula One. And the way it is now is perfectly fine. Well, let's hear from Hamilton now. He's been speaking to Craig Slater.
Well, firstly, it's been an incredible 2 weeks for the team. They've done an amazing job. It's been the most mileage I think we've ever done before, which has been tiring, but been good. And I'm actually glad that I broke it at the end. It's better to have broken it now and found something in Melbourne. So they'll go and rectify that and improve it for the next time we go out. I push the car here and there, but of course when I get to Australia is when I really will get to open it up. So.
And there's a lot of other news bubbling under at the moment. We've just heard in the last hour or so that these new qualifying plans, which I know most of the drivers aren't really in favour of, are to happen. I just wonder, from your point of view as one of the great qualifiers of history, I know we don't compare eras, but should we be meddling around with something like that? Because we like to say Lewis Hamilton did all these poles, other drivers in the past had that, and if it becomes too much of a lottery, we can't really make those comparisons.
Honestly, I don't know. I think what's most important is how the fans feel about it. You know, all I know as a fan of the sport, you know, when I ride, even just as a fan, just coming to the track and I'm sitting in the garage, whether it be practice, and you've got one set of tires for a whole session, so you're sitting in the garage and waiting. And I've said it before, but people just waiting around is an issue. People want to see cars going around. People want to see. I miss the smoke that used to come out the back of the cars when people's engines blew up. Anyways, going back to qualifying, I think I don't know. I think there's been some good formats and there's been some okay formats. I've generally enjoyed the format of the last few years, so that's why it doesn't make sense to me in my head right now of the changes they've made. But you know, don't knock it till you try it. So we'll get there and see how it goes, and then immediately you'll get comments from the fans whether this is good or not. So.
Just one last thing from me, the cockpit protection. You've made it, you know, your feelings clear, but do you think that's going to happen now? Because the FIA have shown they've got a device. There'll be pressure on them maybe to introduce it. So do you see that coming to pass maybe next season or in the seasons to come?
Liking what I said, I really, really hope not. And if it is going to come in, I hope that we have an option to use it or not, because I will not be using it on my car.
Wow. Well, Craig Slater is at the Circuit de Catalunya for us.
Hello there, welcome back to Barcelona. I've got into the Toro Rosso motorhome, and I wonder, you know, you're seeing a lot of the fathers around today. We've seen Keke Rosberg, Nico Rosberg's father. We've got Carlos Sainz over there, so you partly wonder whether motorsport excellence is, I don't know, is it in the genes or is it something you work at over the years? But I want to pose Carlos Sainz himself a question about his childhood, and that is, did you play the game of musical chairs, Carlos? And is qualifying next season going to be a bit of a game, or this season rather, going to be a game of musical chairs?
Yes, I did. Juego de las Sillas in Spain, and of course I did. And every Christmas I would play it with my whole family. Good memories. Let's see if F1 becomes a bit like that. I don't know.
Well, we're hearing that we are going to have this 90 seconds elimination process, cars dropping out one by one, 2 cars left for pole. In practical terms, if that comes in, well, it is going to come in, what is it going to mean? Are you going to have to stay out on track longer? Is there an element of risk and luck introduced?
I don't think it will change much. I think you will still have 1 lap on the tire, and you will just need to time it with your team and make sure you put the lap together. That's it, really. The rest, Mercedes will still beat us all. Ferrari will still be second. I think it will not change that much the order. Maybe a bit more cars on track at the same time, a bit more traffic, especially in Q1. But no, I don't think it will change much.
Just one last thing. A lot of the drivers have had meetings to discuss this halo protection concept. You had quite a nasty off last year. You went under some barriers. Who knows what might have happened in different circumstances. In that regard, do you think if this helps, if this protects some people in some cases, it should come in?
I think something needs to come in because if you tell me now, what do you prefer, the F1 car to be a bit more ugly or not as natural as it looks, but have guys like Jules Bianchi, Justin Wilson around, you know, I think I would sacrifice the look of a Formula 1 car a bit to have these guys around. So we just need to find a compromise between still looking like a Formula 1 sharp car, but we need to find something on the safety side. I think the FIA, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari are pushing a lot for this, and I support them because at the end it's for our own safety. And last year I suffered an accident. Luckily nothing hit my head, but I was quite close to hitting. And look, everything that we can do to improve safety, I think is the right direction. Just let's see if we can make it also nice and good looking.
Well said, Carlos, and we wish you well for the remainder of pre-season. Time is running out. Carlos is going back onto the track, but only a couple of hours remaining now for the drivers to finalise their setups and so on before we all head off to Australia.
Praying for plenty of Premier League managers.
OK, before the break we were talking about the new halo protection device proposed by Motorsport's governing body for next season. We can hear now from one of the drivers who tested it this morning, Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel.
First of all, to go around is okay. You can see what you need to see. I think we can improve the system in terms of aesthetics and also in terms of how much visibly is in your way. But I've tested as well in the simulator, and I think we will see probably evolutions of it very soon. In principle, I agree it doesn't look very nice. It's not the picture that you're used to from Formula One for a long time, but equally if it helps increasing the safety and helps saving lives. There would be at least two drivers in the last 4 years that I remember that would still be around, Henry Surtees and Justin Wilson, if we had this type of system. So I think it can be as ugly as possible, or nothing. I think nothing justifies not having these two guys around anymore.
Final day of Formula One testing in Barcelona. We can cross live to Craig Slater, who is at the Circuit de Catalunya. Time almost up on pre-season testing. How has the test ended for Lewis Hamilton, Craig?
Well, when I caught up with him afterwards, it seemed to me he was quite glad that testing was over. He is a competitive animal, and Formula One testing is not competition. Interestingly, it ended for Lewis Hamilton after his morning session today with his car on the recovery vehicle. After 69 laps, he had a transmission problem, and so that brought an end to his running for this winter. It's quite interesting looking at the facts and figures with regarding to his pre-season. He's covered over 1,500 kilometres, which is an enormous amount, but he does not have a time in the top 10 times of the winter, which is interesting as well. However, he does have the fastest time of anyone on the medium tyre, and that was the tyre that Mercedes prioritised in all their running. So maybe Lewis Hamilton hasn't got everything done that he wanted, but when I spoke to him a little earlier today, he seemed pretty contented with what he had got done.
Well, firstly, it's been an incredible 2 weeks for the team. They've done an amazing job. It's been the most mileage I think we've ever done before, which has been tiring, but been good. And I'm actually glad that I broke it at the end. It's better to have broken it now and found something in Melbourne. So they'll go and rectify that and improve it for the next time we go out. I pushed the car here and there, but of course when I get to Australia is when I really will get to open it up.
Now, he's had lots more to say as well, hasn't he, about the halo, the cockpit protection device?
Yes, he had. Yesterday evening on his Instagram page, he described it as the worst modification there had ever been to an F1 car. A lot of the drivers do think it's ugly, to be fair, but it looks as though something along those lines will be brought in at some point. This is actually the device that Mercedes, Hamilton's own team, have helped develop, and it sits over the front of the cockpit with a central supporting pillar, partly possibly obscuring the driver's eyesight, although Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen both reckoned visibility was okay with it fitted to the car. It probably won't come in until at least the 2017 season, and other options are being considered. But I put it to Hamilton today that having trialled this device, having made it known publicly that it does exist, that the FIA would now be under pressure to introduce it, so it was only a matter of time before he would have it on his car.
I really hope not. And if it is going to come in, I hope that we have an option to use it or not, because I will not be using it on my car.
In principle, I agree it doesn't look very nice. It's not the picture that you're used to from Formula One for a long time, but equally if it helps increasing the safety and helps saving lives. There would be at least two drivers in the last 4 years that I remember that would still be around, Henry Surtees and Justin Wilson, if we had this type of system. So I think it can be as ugly as possible, or nothing. I think nothing justifies not having these two guys around anymore.
Vettel's opinion is the one shared by the majority of drivers here, although Hamilton is not alone in his own. But most of the drivers, Hamilton and Vettel included, are very much opposed to these changes coming in to the qualifying format. From the Australian Grand Prix, we will have this knockout system with cars eliminated every 90 seconds until two drivers battle it out for pole in Q3. We're expecting that news to be confirmed by the World Motorsport Council, but I understand it, according to Sky sources, that will be in place from the Australian Grand Prix onwards this season.
Thank you, Craig.
Well, Red Bull's Danny Kvyat thinks that the dangerous nature of Formula One needs to be preserved.
Obviously, we don't want people to get hurt, but on the other hand, you know, Formula One has always been dangerous. There are some other dangerous sports, like boxing. They didn't change the tools to make it less dangerous. Let's say they didn't start fighting with pillows or anything like that. So the same in Formula One. I guess it has to maintain some level of danger. It's the attraction also to the sport, and I'm also a racing driver because it's dangerous. It makes you feel alive.
Well, one thing that the drivers do agree on is the new constant elimination qualifying format, which will be introduced at the Australian Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time. Now, we understand that the change was approved by the World Motorsport Council in Geneva this morning. On Wednesday night, the drivers were called to a meeting by race director Charlie Whiting to discuss the changes, and Vettel says that they are all against the new format.
The decisions lately and so on, it is fair to say that it's lacking leadership. I think it's a little bit chaotic if a couple of weeks before the season you start to reinvent certain rules and formats of qualifying, as has been discussed the last couple of weeks. So I'm not a fan, personally not a fan of the qualifying, and I think speaking on behalf of all the drivers, no driver is. We don't get what's wrong with the old qualifying and why to change it.
OK, to the track now. This morning, Hamilton's Mercedes broke down for the first time during pre-season testing. It happened just before the lunch break and was caused by a transmission problem. Hamilton did, however, complete more laps than anyone else this morning and also managed the fastest time this winter on the medium tyres.
Well, firstly, it's been an incredible...
Well, the start of the new Formula One season is just a fortnight away now, and the 2 testing sessions in Barcelona have finished today. We can cross live to Craig Slater, who is at the Circuit de Catalunya. Craig, what have we learned from testing?
Well, we'll have to crunch the numbers over the next hours and days, but looking at them all superficially, it's interesting that Ferrari have the 4 quickest outright times this winter before Nico Rosberg's fastest time. Lewis Hamilton doesn't even make the top 10, although he had the fastest time of anyone on the medium tyres, which was the one that Mercedes prioritised. Nico Rosberg also, interestingly, put in a lap which was 2 full seconds quicker than the fastest lap in the Grand Prix last year during a Rosberg race simulation. Mercedes are still favourites, but it does look tight at the front. They had excellent reliability until the final day when Lewis Hamilton broke down with a transmission problem. So it looks well set up for the season ahead. And here are the thoughts of Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel after testing finished today.
I'm actually glad that I broke it at the end. It's better to have broken it now and found something in Melbourne. So they'll go and rectify that and improve it for the next time we go out. I pushed the car here and there, but of course when I get to Australia is when I really will get to open it up.
Overall, I'm happy with the feeling in the car. Difficult to say, but speaking about performance, compare it to the others, but performance for ourselves, I think we are very happy with the step we've
Lewis
made.
Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel, incidentally, are 2 drivers who have very different views on this new Halo cockpit protection system which Vettel had on his cars today. It really has split opinion up and down the Formula One grid. Some drivers think it's a safety measure and must be introduced to prevent the worst possibly happening on track. Others who are more traditional, likes of Lewis Hamilton and Nico Hülkenberg, think open cockpit racing should stay the way it is, and perhaps even that element of risk is part of the attraction. It's interesting because some drivers feel insulted because they think others are acting rather macho over this, and I caught up with Daniel Ricciardo later on today, and he had some quite harsh words for Nico Hülkenberg's stance. Hülkenberg has come out very much against this Halo system.
I heard Hülkenberg say some things. I don't agree with that because it's like there's no need to be a hero about the situation. You know, the sport still it doesn't change the sport or the speed of the car. It's just if there are any flying objects, you know, it's an extra bit of protection for us. So I don't know why he's puffing his chest out for something like that. It doesn't make sense.
The other big story which captivated the paddock here was the change to the qualifying system, which was confirmed. We broke it on Sky Sports News early this afternoon. So we are going to have this knockout system introduced in Melbourne, cars dropping out after 90-second intervals, leaving 2 cars to fight it out for pole in Q3. It might add some chaos, it might spice up the action. It's going to make things very interesting indeed. And of course, you can see everyone's packing up behind me now, and there is enormous excitement building ahead of this 2016 campaign, which gets underway in exactly 2 weeks from now. We'll be live and exclusive on Sky Sports F1 with first practice from Melbourne. It's going to be very interesting to see if Hamilton can get off to the kind of start he did last year, or maybe this will be a circuit which favours Sebastian Vettel and the Ferrari. Only then, I think, we'll really know who the contenders are this year.
Yep, looking forward to it. Thanks very much, Craig.
Now, the new qualifying rules proposed for the forthcoming Formula One season have not gone down well with the drivers. Oh no, nevertheless, they will be introduced for the first race in Australia in 2 weeks' time.
He'd been trailing behind his teammate on the timesheets, but 90 minutes into the final day of winter testing, Lewis Hamilton put in the fastest lap of pre-season on the medium tyres. While Sebastian Vettel took his turn to try out the new Halo cockpit concept on the Ferrari. But it was off-track news that was grabbing the headlines in the Barcelona paddock. After toing and froing, it had finally been announced that the new qualifying format would be brought in at the first race in Australia in just over 2 weeks' time, despite the drivers voicing their concerns to the governing body in a meeting in the paddock on Wednesday evening. All 22 drivers will go into the first 16-minute session, where the slowest car after 7 minutes will be eliminated. And this will continue every 90 seconds until there are 15 cars left. They go into a second session, where the cut-off will be at 6 minutes. The slowest car is eliminated, and that continues every 90 seconds until just 8 cars remain. So instead of a top 10 shootout, it's now a top 8 elimination. The 14-minute Q3 will have a cut-off at 5 minutes, where the slowest driver will be knocked out, and that will be repeated every 90 seconds until only the pole sitter remains.
I think there's been some good formats and there's been some okay formats. I've generally enjoyed the format of the last few years, so that's why it doesn't make sense to me in my head right now of the changes they've made. But you know, don't knock it till you try it. So we'll get there and see how it goes, and then immediately you'll get comments from the fans whether it's good or not.
You will still have 1 lap on the tire, and you will just need to time it with your team and make sure you put the lap together. That's it, really. The rest, Mercedes will still beat us all, Ferrari will still be second. I think it will not change that much the order.
I think Formula One is doing fine in the background. I think, the decisions lately and so on, it is fair to say that it's lacking leadership. I think it's a little bit chaotic if a couple of weeks before the season you start to reinvent certain rules and formats of qualifying, as has been discussed the last couple of weeks. So I'm not a fan, personally not a fan of the qualifying, and I think speaking on behalf of all the drivers, no driver is.
On track, it took 8 days and over 3,500 miles, but eventually the Mercedes W07 stopped. A transmission failure ending Lewis Hamilton's morning of testing. Nico Rosberg took over for the afternoon's running, but again concentrated on the medium tyre, which meant Ferrari ended pre-season with the 2 fastest times seen all winter, but not knowing what Mercedes could have done had they used those super soft and ultra soft tyres. Rachel Brooks, Sky Sports.